Welcome to another fan-requested Top 10 list. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the greatest battles in slap fight championship history. Some from our early live shows and others from our more recent tournaments. This list was put together by the fans, so let's take a look at several of the fights that put slap fight on the map. I'm Slap Fight CEO JT Tilley, and I'll be reacting to this list along with you. Let's get to it. Okay, the Bayou Bastard versus Lead Belt Chapman. This is a strange fight. This is one of those unintentionally hilarious fights that happened during a tournament. This was the Slap Fight Adrenaline middleweight tournament. And Ricky, our super fan, calls himself the Bayou Bastard because he's from Louisiana. He actually had contacted us on Discord. He was not a registered fighter that was going to compete in the tournament, but he won this contest for a super fan to be able to come and compete. And got all the way here, and then his regularly scheduled opponent, for whatever reason, just couldn't compete. And so Ricky ended up with no opponent in the quarterfinals, and so that ended up getting him a bye and advanced him to the semifinals, which in itself was really strange to have the superfan in the semifinals. But even stranger was the fact that just the night before, Lead Belt had fought Young James. He's the former light heavyweight champion. And Lead Belt had upset him, and everybody was kind of expecting that Lead Belt was going to go to the finals with Coach Killa for the title. And so what happened was during the course of that fight against Young James, Lead Belt blew out his right elbow, and he couldn't hardly even move his right arm. And so he either had to withdraw from the tournament or switch to his left arm for day two. And usually we don't allow fighters to switch arms in the middle of a tournament, but this was a 2-day tournament, so it was okay. And when he fought Ricky, he just couldn't control that left arm. He didn't have any power. His accuracy was shot, but also you got Ricky, a complete novice. He was having a hard time controlling his penalties. And so this became a great battle of just who could screw up the least. Both of these guys are great guys, but this was really a ridiculous fight. Oh, this fight was definitely a battle. This was the Slap Fight Vendetta light heavyweight tournament, and this is the final actually. This was Coach Killa versus Wolverine, and Coach Killa had absolutely no experience at slap fighting. He was a last-minute replacement with this tournament, and so for him to be in the final was, really kind of shocking. But there was a really great moment, and this is probably it right here. Yeah, that moment right there, that'll give you an idea what kind of power Wolverine has. And also you can see how tough Coach Killa is. He took, I want to say they went somewhere maybe 9 rounds, I'm not sure, but he took a lot of bombs from Wolverine, and Wolverine just kept speed running him like that. He just kept pulling back to the barrel and just smacking him. And Coach Killa is a really tough guy, but I think he realized during this fight that he was just a little bit too small for light heavyweight, because at this point he went home and cut weight, came back as a middleweight, and he's undefeated at middleweight, and he's knocked out just about everybody he's ever faced in that weight class. But, you're talking about the GOAT here with Wolverine. I mean, he's got such a ridiculous technique that, some of these guys, I just don't even understand how they stay on their feet. Most of them don't. Yeah, he just slapped the piss out of Coach Killa. You can see there, Coach Killa has great power, but he's hitting Ron so hard he blew out his elbow, And of course, didn't quit. He just kept coming. And at a certain point, you think, this he knows he can't win the fight, but he doesn't have a lot of quit in him. Yeah, there it is, round 9. That was a great battle right there. And that was a battle between Coach Killa and himself, I think, just to acknowledge that he had lost that fight. But we all know he came back strong. I don't think there's very many people that really know what was happening with this tournament here. We did this tournament at Comic-Con, and that's why you can see up on the stage there, you can see we've got Back to the Future, the DeLorean from Back to the Future is up there, and then the car from Knight Rider is up there. And it was a neat little Comic-Con event that we had a chance to be part of. But what we did was we provided just a free show for the fans, and we had a couple of barrels on stage. We called it the Double Barrel Tournament, and that's the first time we ever really started using the barrel. But there were 4 guys, Rocky Moore, Hellfire, Frank the Tank, and Darius the Destroyer. And they fought until there were only 2 guys left, and that was Frank and Darius. And these guys just went to town on each other. You can see, I don't remember how many rounds it was, but they went to town. Frank got to the finals of the first heavyweight tournament against Darius and lost, and it was really eating at him. He really wanted another shot. And, I mean, they really beat each other up pretty good at this tournament. And then at the very end, what happened was, I believe Frank broke his hand, yeah. And as soon as his hand was broken, we had to call it. So then Darius went ahead and shook that hand. Okay, this one was definitely a battle. This was actually the very first fight that we ever held. It was in a little bar, and we had a 4-man heavyweight tournament. And it was just right at the very beginning. You'll notice we were just using a table. We didn't have the barrel yet. And there was a lot of differences back then. We made some changes over the years, but it was a heavyweight fight. We did not have a super heavyweight division back then. So these 2 guys hit me up. One of them was Zeus on your left. He's a power lifter, 300 pounds, big guy. And then, of course, Frank the Tank also mentioned that he wanted to slap fight. So when we decided to start the event, these were the first 2 guys we put on stage, and it was unbelievable. We had no idea what to expect. The place was packed. It was just a little club, but it was packed, and these guys absolutely lit it up. It was a back and forth fight, and man, I think what happened at the end is both of these guys were so swollen up on their right, I believe it was their left cheek, excuse me, that eventually I think Zeus had problems with his jaw and he had to tap out. But I've actually been talking to Zeus, and he's considering making an appearance again here pretty soon, so keep your eyes peeled for Zeus. And of course, we all know Frank the Tank went on to become a legend in the sport, but this was babyface Frank before he ever had any experience at all. Plenty of belly, though. Great fight. Oh, this is a great fight. This is Darius the Destroyer. Actually, this is the same night as the Zeus versus Frank fight that we just looked at. This is the same night, same tournament. These were the 4 guys in the original heavyweight tournament. And what's crazy about this is that this is Mike, the guy without his shirt on. I believe Mike was 340, and Zeus and Frank were both 300 pounds. And then you see here Darius, he's 255, 19 years old. And we felt really bad. We thought this kid was just going to get destroyed in this tournament. But as you can see, he stood toe-to-toe with every one of them and ended up going home with the title. But Mike, on the internet, they always want to know why Mike doesn't have his shirt on. And it's really simple. This was a dude that had tickets to the show, and he was sitting up in the balcony, and he just got excited and came down and said, "Hey, can I compete?" And we said, "Sure, you can compete." But the man had on like a really nice suit and tie, and he was a sales manager for a multi-million-dollar company. And so he just took his shirt and tie off and decided just to come on up. I think he had his dress pants on and some shiny shoes. And he came up and just, he went to town, and he and Darius went crazy. It was a great fight. Oh, yeah, I knew this one would be on here. This was great. If you haven't seen the Vendetta tournament, this is one of the quarterfinal rounds, I think, of the Vendetta tournament. And this was really interesting because it's Rocky Moore. Rocky Moore had been sent away for a couple of years and was just coming back. and he was trying to get a piece of Wolverine. So this was his chance to get a rematch with Wolverine, and he wanted to take the belt home. And he was supposed to fight Chris Dodson, but Chris Dodson was in a car accident, so we needed a last-minute replacement, and that's where Coach Killer came from. And you can see how sloppy Coach Killer is in this video. He showed up like 3 hours late, and it wasn't his fault. He wasn't supposed to be fighting, so he showed up late, and as soon as he got there, Rocky was just all over him, yelling at him and trying to start fights. And so Coach Killer was pretty motivated to win this one. The problem with slap fighting is that the penalties are so severe. It's such a high-risk thing that he committed a couple of penalties, and at one point he ended up losing a turn. And so even though he got a little bit better of the exchanges between he and Rocky, he didn't end the fight. He didn't finish the fight. So it went to the judges' scorecards, and he had landed 6 strikes, and Rocky had landed 7. And that's how he ended up winning according to the judges. And Rocky went on to get knocked out by Wolverine, and Coach Killer won through the loser's bracket and made it to the finals. But Rocky and Coach Killer was a great battle. Hammer versus Tank. This was also a really great fight. This was right after the pandemic. We had all been stuck at home for a while, and this was one of our first shows back after that quarantine and everything. And so Frank was chomping at the bit, and we had been contacted by the Hammer, who he's really one of the nicest guys that's ever competed with us here. And he came in 300 pounds, same height, same weight as Frank, smallest 2 guys in the super heavyweight tournament. And these guys, I mean, this was a crazy fight. This is actually, if you get a chance to watch this fight, what ended up happening was Frank was targeting just the meat of the cheek with the Hammer, and he was getting some really good swelling from it. But also the Hammer kept taking his mouthpiece out between rounds, which makes the swelling get much worse. And I love that Frank never said a word about it until they got close to the end of the fight. And then Frank kind of leaned in and kind of said, "Hey man, you should stop taking your mouthpiece out." But yeah, man, Hammer was so swollen that his brother had to pull him out of the fight. But before they pulled out of the fight, it was fantastic. This was the first super heavyweight fight that we ever had. It was 3rd or 4th show in. The Crazy Hawaiian, he actually lived very near to the city where we were doing these original shows, and just right across the state line in Arkansas was where the Hillbilly Hippie came from. And these guys, they both contacted us within the same period of time. They both weighed right around the same amount, and we were really excited to have that match. But what happened was they found each other on social media, and they started talking trash to each other on the internet, and it kind of got out of hand to the point where on fight night they were ready to go to blows, and their families were screaming and hollering at each other inside the venue, and it was a pretty tense fight. And so these guys, they just clubbed the piss out of each other. There was a lot of penalties, and it was almost like a street fight. A lot of people don't realize this, but this fight lasted 20 rounds. It ended in the 20th round when the Hillbilly Hippie decided to tap out, and the Hawaiian won by TKO. But it was just, there were a lot of penalties, there was a lot of testosterone, and it was a really, really awesome fight. They both got rocked, and at the end of the match, though, there was no doubt the Crazy Hawaiian was the winner. Okay, this is one of my favorite fights ever. I think in the history of this sport, I think this is probably one of the few at the top of the list of greatest matches, but it was a great battle. Wolverine was upset because there were a lot of people saying that his beard was an unfair advantage, and he doesn't like that. He doesn't feel like the beard makes that much of a difference, and so he just decided to shave it off. So he went to the barber shop the day of the show and cut his hair and had his beard shaved off and showed up just to make that point for the fans. And of course, he went up against Young James, who Young James is the former light heavyweight champion, and that's the guy that Wolverine got his title from to begin with. So Young James had been out of the show for a while, and he hit me up, and he just really wanted to make a run at Ron, and so we booked it. And this was an unlimited round matchup, and young James just doesn't quit. He just doesn't quit. He just took so much damage. He believed that he could win that fight, and he believed that he could catch Wolverine with a shot, and it just wasn't happening for him, and he just didn't want to give up. He kept hanging in, and he took some pretty solid shots, and when it was all said and done, it was a dominant performance by Wolverine, and it showed us all why he is the number 2 ranked slap fighter in the entire world. Okay, so this is definitely one of the greatest battles. This might be the greatest. This was the first time we ever saw Wolverine. He entered a heavyweight tournament, and this actually right here is the first slap he ever threw. Right there. And, he already was great. We had already had 2 or 3 tournaments at heavyweight, and Darius had won all of them. So Ron really, going up against Darius in his first match was really a disadvantage. But they went 7 rounds. It was a quarterfinal matchup, so it was 7 rounds. Ron had a stepping violation, I think, in round 3, and so he lost a turn. And so at the end of the fight, Darius had landed 7 slaps, and Wolverine had landed 6. And so that's how Darius won that decision. But that was a fantastic fight. A lot of people ask me if we're ever going to have that fight again, and the truth is I don't know, but I would love to see it. Thanks for watching this top 10 list of the greatest battles in slap fight history. Do you agree with our list? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. My name is JT Tilley, and you've been watching Slap Fight. There is only one.